Hello, and welcome back to another evening of stories and deep dives. Tonight, we're going somewhere a little darker than usual, and I mean that in the best possible way. We're spending the next couple of hours with one of the most fascinating characters ever put on television, a man who somehow, against every conceivable odd, managed to get away with murder for the better part of a decade. And I'm not talking about one murder, I'm talking about dozens, possibly over 100, depending on how you count them, all while working inside the very police department that was actively trying to catch people exactly like him. We're talking about Dexter Morgan. Now, tonight's particular angle on Dexter is one I've been wanting to explore for a while because the more I rewatched the show and really thought about the plot beats, the more I kept arriving at the same conclusion. Dexter is smart, absolutely. He's meticulous, disciplined, and truly gifted at what he does, both as a forensic analyst and as a serial killer. But intelligence alone does not explain how this man survived 8 seasons, a sequel series, a prequel, and what's shaping up to be yet another continuation without ever being brought to justice in any real, lasting way. The answer, over and over again, is luck. Absurd, impossible, borderline, supernatural luck. So that's what we're doing tonight. Every time Dexter Morgan got insanely lucky. Every close call, every miracle save, every moment where the universe bent itself into knots to keep this man free. And there are way more of them than you probably remember. Before we get into it, if you like what I do here and want to support the channel, consider subscribing. It really does help, but no pressure at all. Just settle in, get comfortable, and let's begin. Alright, so for anyone who might be a little fuzzy on the details, or maybe you're here because someone recommended this as a good video to fall asleep to, and you've never actually watched Dexter, let me give you the foundation. Because to understand just how lucky this man got, you need to understand exactly what kind of tightrope he was walking every single day of his life. Dexter Morgan is a blood spatter analyst for the Miami Metro Police Department. That's his day job. He examines crime scenes, reads the patterns that blood makes when it hits walls and floors and ceilings, and he helps detectives piece together how murders happened. He's genuinely excellent at it too, one of the best in Miami. His colleagues respect him, even if some of them find him a little odd, a little socially awkward, maybe a touch too cheerful about gruesome crime scenes. But generally, Dexter is liked. He brings donuts. He does solid work. He's polite. What his colleagues don't know, what almost nobody knows for the vast majority of the series, is that Dexter Morgan is a serial killer. He has what he calls a dark passenger, this overwhelming compulsion to kill that has been with him since childhood. And the reason it's been with him since childhood traces back to the single most traumatic event imaginable. When Dexter was about 3 years old, he and his older brother Brian were locked inside a shipping container and forced to watch as their biological mother, Laura Moser, was murdered with a chainsaw by drug dealers. Laura had been working as a confidential informant for the Miami police, specifically for a detective named Harry Morgan. When her cover was blown, the dealers killed her. Both boys sat in that container for days, in the blood, before they were found. Harry Morgan, the detective who had been running Laura as an informant, adopted Dexter out of guilt and genuine care. Brian, the older brother, went into the foster system and was essentially forgotten. Harry raised Dexter as his own, alongside his biological daughter, Deborah. And as Dexter grew up, Harry noticed something deeply wrong. The boy killed the neighbor's dog because the barking was keeping his sick adoptive mother awake. But when Harry dug up the grave where Dexter had buried the dog, he found more than just the dog's bones in there. Harry realized that his adopted son had violent, homicidal urges that weren't going away. And instead of sending Dexter to an institution, which honestly would have been the reasonable thing to do, Harry made a choice that would define the entire series. He created what became known as the Code of Harry, a set of rules designed to channel Dexter's killing instinct in a direction that Harry could live with. The code boils down to 2 things. First, never get caught. Second, only kill people who deserve it, meaning murderers who have escaped justice through legal technicalities or corruption or whatever else. Dexter can't just kill anyone. He has to confirm guilt first. He has to have proof. And then, once he's satisfied that this person is a killer who slipped through the cracks, he sedates them with a drug called M99, wraps an entire room in plastic sheeting, straps them to a table, and kills them. He takes a single drop of their blood on a glass slide as a trophy. Then he dismembers the body, puts the pieces into black garbage bags, takes his boat, a fishing vessel called the Slice of Life, out into the ocean and dumps the bags overboard. This is what Dexter does over and over for years, all while showing up to work at the Miami Metro Police Department, eating lunch with homicide detectives, attending birthday parties, dating, eventually getting married and having a child. He lives this completely bifurcated existence where half his life is spent as a mild-mannered forensics nerd and the other half is spent committing elaborate ritualistic murders. And here's the thing that makes the luck angle so fascinating. The central tension of Dexter isn't just, will he get caught? It's the fact that he's surrounded by trained investigators at all times. His sister, Deborah Morgan, is a detective who eventually becomes a lieutenant of homicide. His colleague, Sergeant James Dokes, has decades of experience and sharp instincts. The FBI literally sets up shop in his building for an entire season. Over and over, the people best equipped to catch him are the people sitting 10 feet away from his desk. So when I say Dexter got lucky, I don't mean he found a $20 bill on the sidewalk. I mean the man should have been caught, convicted, and sentenced to death roughly 47 times over the course of the show. And each time, something intervened. Sometimes it was his own quick thinking, sure. But just as often, it was someone else's mistake, or a coincidence, or an act of outright cosmic charity that kept the handcuffs off his wrists. Before we dive into the specifics, let me give you a quick sense of the scale we're dealing with. The original Dexter ran for 8 seasons from 2006 to 2013, 96 episodes in total. Then came Dexter New Blood in 2021, a 10-episode miniseries that was supposed to provide a definitive ending. Then Dexter Original Sin in 2024, a prequel set in 1991. And then Dexter Resurrection, picking up after New Blood with Dexter somehow still alive. The franchise has produced well over 100 episodes of television at this point, and across nearly every single one of them, Dexter is doing something that could get him caught or killed. The man lived on the edge of a cliff for 20 years and never once fell off. Or when he did fall off, he landed on something soft. The show also operates with an interesting structure that's worth understanding for context. Each season is built around a central antagonist, a big bad whose presence forces Dexter to confront a specific aspect of his own nature. Season 1's Ice Truck Killer forces him to confront his biological family. Season 2's Bay Harbor Butcher Investigation forces him to confront the fragility of his secret. Season 3's Miguel Prado forces him to confront friendship. Season 4's Trinity Killer forces him to confront fatherhood, and so on all the way through Season 8 and beyond. Every year, the show puts Dexter in a box and asks whether he can think his way out. And every year, the answer involves some combination of intelligence, ruthlessness, and an astonishing amount of blind fortune. Let's start at the beginning. Season 1 introduces us to Miami's Ice Truck Killer, a serial murderer who drains prostitutes of their blood, slices them into perfectly clean pieces, and displays the parts in public places. It's theatrical, deliberate, and clearly the work of someone who wants attention. What nobody at Miami Metro realizes, at least not for a long time, is that the Ice Truck Killer is leaving messages specifically for Dexter. The crime scenes contain coded references that only someone with Dexter's background would recognize. The number 103 keeps appearing, embedded in the scenes in subtle ways. It takes Dexter a while to figure it out, but that number corresponds to October 3rd, the date of the shipping container massacre where his mother was killed. The Ice Truck Killer isn't just any serial killer, he's Brian Moser, Dexter's biological brother. The same boy who sat in that container with him over 20 years ago. Brian survived the foster system, grew up damaged in his own way, and became a murderer. But unlike Dexter, Brian didn't have a Harry Morgan to give him a code. He kills without rules. Brian infiltrates Dexter's life under the alias Rudy Cooper. He gets close to Deborah, he actually starts dating her, he proposes to her. All of this is a long con designed to reconnect with Dexter, to trigger those buried memories, and to eventually reveal himself as the brother Dexter never knew he had. Now here's the first major instance of insane luck. Brian's entire operation is built around communicating with Dexter through crime scenes. The coded messages, the number 103, the specific way bodies are arranged. All of it is designed to catch Dexter's attention, and it does. But it also means that if anyone else at Miami Metro had looked closely enough at why the Ice Truck Killer seemed to be talking to their blood spatter analyst specifically, the whole thing unravels. Why is the killer referencing a date that connects to Dexter's childhood? Why does the evidence seem almost personally directed at one member of the forensic team? Nobody asks these questions. Lieutenant Laguerta is wrapped up in departmental politics and power plays. Deborah is working undercover in Vice and fighting for a transfer to homicide. Sergeant Dokes has a vague sense that something is off about Dexter, this instinctive suspicion that he can't quite articulate, but he doesn't connect it to the ice truck killer case. Everyone is looking at the puzzle pieces individually without ever stepping back to see the picture. And then there's Camilla Figg. This is one of the quieter lucky breaks, but honestly, it might be one of the most important in the entire series. Camilla is the records supervisor at Miami Metro. She's been there for decades. She's a warm, grandmotherly figure who genuinely cares about Dexter. And years earlier, on the day Dexter's adoption by Harry Morgan was finalized, Camilla destroyed his file. Just got rid of it. The file that contained details about the shipping container massacre, about Laura Moser, about the circumstances under which a 3-year-old boy was found sitting in his mother's blood. She did it to protect Dexter because Harry asked her to, because they both wanted this kid to have a clean start. The thing is, Camilla later made the connection between Brian Moser and the ice truck killer. She realized that Dexter's biological brother was the man terrorizing Miami, but she kept that to herself too. If that file had remained in the system, any investigator at any point in the series could have pulled it and immediately connected Dexter to a violent past that perfectly profiles someone with homicidal tendencies. A mother killed by chainsaw, a brother who became a serial killer, childhood trauma of the most extreme variety. That file, in the hands of someone like Frank Lundy or even LaGuerta, would have ended everything before it began. Camilla destroyed it out of love. Dexter never asked her to. He didn't even know about it until much later. That's luck. The season 1 finale, an episode called Born Free, brings everything to a head. Brian reveals himself to Dexter, shows him the truth about their shared past, and tries to convince him to abandon Harry's code and embrace who he really is. Brian's vision is the two of them killing together, free from rules, free from pretending to be normal. He even kidnaps Deborah and presents her to Dexter as a potential first kill, since she's not a blood relative and, in Brian's twisted logic, represents the family that stole Dexter from him. Dexter is genuinely tempted. For the first time in his life, someone fully understands him, but in the end, he chooses Deborah. He frees her, then returns to Brian and kills him, slitting his throat and staging it to look like a suicide. And this is another enormous stroke of luck, though it might not seem like it at first glance. If Brian Moser had been arrested alive, he would have told everyone everything. Brian's entire motivation was to be reunited with his brother. He had no reason to protect Dexter's secret. In fact, exposing Dexter would have been a way to force that reunion, to prove that they were the same, that they both lived in the dark. Brian would have told the police that their blood spatter analyst was a serial killer, and given everything Brian knew about the shipping container, about their shared past, about the way Dexter's crime scenes mirrored his own methodology, investigators would have had more than enough to dig further. But Brian is dead, staged as a suicide. And with him dies the only person outside of Harry, who is already dead at this point, who knows the full truth about Dexter Morgan. Miami Metro closes the ice truck killer case. The department moves on. Nobody ever learns that the killer was Dexter's biological brother. The connection between the two men, which should have been a flashing neon sign pointing directly at Dexter's double life, is buried forever. Season 1 ends with Dexter walking away clean. His secret intact, his life undisturbed. And if you think that's an impressive run of luck, I need you to understand something. Season 1 was the easy part, because what happens in Season 2 makes everything I just described look like a minor inconvenience by comparison. Season 2 is where Dexter Morgan's luck becomes genuinely, almost comically unbelievable. And I don't mean that as a criticism of the show, honestly. The writing in the first 4 seasons is excellent, and the way these near misses play out feels organic in the moment. It's only when you step back and look at the full picture that you realize just how many separate miracles had to occur for this man to keep breathing free air. So let me set the stage, because everything that happens in Season 2 starts with the worst possible news for someone in Dexter's position. Divers discover his dumping ground. all those carefully wrapped garbage bags full of dismembered body parts that Dexter has been dropping into the ocean from the slice of life they find them. The media immediately goes wild. They dubbed the unknown killer the Bay Harbor Butcher. And suddenly, Dexter's entire body of work is front-page news. The body count rises fast. First 12, then 13 confirmed victims pulled from the ocean floor, and forensic teams are working around the clock to identify the remains. Then it gets worse. The FBI sends Special Agent Frank Lundy to lead the investigation, and Frank Lundy is not some bumbling bureaucrat who's going to shuffle papers and miss obvious clues. He's sharp, patient, methodical, and he has a genuine talent for reading people. He's the kind of investigator who follows evidence wherever it goes, regardless of how uncomfortable the conclusions might be. He sets up a full task force right inside Miami Metro, which means the investigation into Dexter's murders is now being conducted from the same building where Dexter shows up every morning with his coffee and his pleasant smile. Lundy's first major conclusion is that the Bay Harbor Butcher is probably someone in law enforcement. The victims all have criminal records. The method of killing is precise and forensically aware. The disposal method suggests someone with access to boats and knowledge of ocean currents. Whoever this person is, they know how the system works and they know how to exploit it. This profile fits Dexter perfectly. But it also fits a number of other people in the department, and this is where the first lucky break lands. I should mention here that Masuka, the forensic tech who works alongside Dexter, actually develops a lead early in Season 2 that could have pointed directly at Dexter. He discovers algae diatoms on some of the recovered body parts, a specific type of microscopic organism that could be used to identify the exact marina or harbor where the Bay Harbor Butcher keeps his boat. If Masuka had been given the time and resources to follow this lead to completion, he could have narrowed down the Butcher's base of operations to a small number of possible locations, one of which would have included the marina where Dexter docks the slice of life. Dexter finds out about this lead and immediately starts worrying, as he should. But the investigation is moving slowly. There are bureaucratic delays, competing priorities, and the kind of institutional sluggishness that always benefits the person trying not to be found. The algae evidence never produces a definitive result before the investigation shifts its focus to Dokes, and by the time anyone could have circled back to it, the case is closed. If Masuka had been faster, or if the department had thrown more resources at the forensic analysis, this single piece of evidence could have identified Dexter's marina and put him at the top of the suspect list weeks before Dokes became the convenient scapegoat. That's one of the quieter forms of luck in the series. Not a dramatic rescue or a miraculous coincidence, but the slow grinding of institutional bureaucracy working in Dexter's favor. Evidence that could have caught him simply never got processed fast enough, and by the time it could have mattered, the world had already decided that someone else was guilty. There's another early Season 2 moment worth mentioning too. Dexter writes a fake manifesto from the Bay Harbor Butcher and plants it for the task force to find. The manifesto is designed to mislead the investigation, to create a false psychological profile that doesn't match Dexter's real characteristics. It's a risky move because any trained behavioral analyst could potentially see through a fake document, but Lundy's team takes the bait. The manifesto sends the task force in a new direction, buying Dexter more time and adding another layer of misdirection to an already confused investigation. The fact that this works is partly about Dexter's intelligence, his understanding of criminal psychology and investigative methodology, but it's also about timing and institutional pressure. The task force is under enormous public scrutiny. The media is running wall-to-wall coverage. Politicians are demanding results. In that environment, any new lead, even one that might be suspicious under calmer circumstances, gets treated as credible because the pressure to show progress is overwhelming. Dexter exploits this perfectly, feeding the machine exactly what it wants to hear, at exactly the moment when it's most desperate to hear something. Sergeant James Dokes has been suspicious of Dexter since Season 1. He's had this persistent gut feeling that something is deeply wrong with his colleague. He can't prove anything, can't point to a specific piece of evidence, but his instincts are screaming. In Season 2, with the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation ramping up, Dokes starts following Dexter obsessively, tailing him after work, showing up in parking lots, watching his apartment. He's determined to catch Dexter doing something that confirms what his gut is telling him. The problem for Dokes, and the lucky break for Dexter, is that this aggressive pursuit actually makes Dokes himself look like a much better suspect than Dexter. Dokes has more officer-involved shootings on his record than anyone else at Miami Metro. He has a background in special operations, meaning he's trained in exactly the kinds of techniques the butcher would use. He has the physical capability and the temperament. And his behavior during the investigation, the secretive trips, the paranoid surveillance of a colleague, the aggressive confrontations in the office, all of it reads as the behavior of a man with something to hide. And then Dokes does something that, from an outside perspective, makes him look incredibly guilty. He steals Dexter's blood slides. Now, this is one of those moments where you just have to sit with the absurdity of it. Dokes breaks into Dexter's apartment, finds the blood slide box hidden inside the air conditioning unit, and takes it. His reasoning is solid. He wants to have the slides analyzed independently to prove they're connected to the butcher's victims, which would prove that Dexter is the killer. It's actually good detective work in a way, but instead of taking them straight to the police or the FBI, Dokes flies to Haiti to use a discreet lab through an old military contact. While Dokes is out of the country, the FBI gets a warrant to search his car at the airport, and they find the blood slides in the trunk. Think about that for a second. The trophies from Dexter's kills, the most damning physical evidence of his double life, are discovered in the possession of the man who has been acting the most suspiciously throughout the entire investigation. The man with the violent history, the special ops background, and the guilty-looking behavior. From Lundy's perspective, from Captain Matthews' perspective, from literally everyone's perspective, this looks like the case is solved. Lundy and Matthews bring Dexter in and present him with the slides. Dexter plays the part beautifully. He acts shocked. They tell him their prime suspect is Dokes. They lay out how Dokes investigated several of the butcher's victims before their deaths, and how his background perfectly fits the profile of a murderous vigilante. Since Dokes fled the country that morning, they obtained the warrant for his car and found the slides. Dexter says he's always sensed something off about Dokes, which, from the perspective of everyone in the room, makes total sense. Dokes has been antagonizing Dexter for 2 seasons. Everyone has seen it. So of course Dexter would have sensed something wrong. And then comes the part that really makes you shake your head. Dexter is appointed lead forensic technician in analyzing his own blood slides. The serial killer is given authority over the forensic investigation into his own murders. He wipes the slide box clean of his fingerprints, directs the FBI technicians to do the blood work in a way that won't raise flags, and essentially manages the entire process from the inside. I honestly think this might be the most ironic situation in television history. The FBI came to Miami to catch the Bay Harbor butcher. They set up shop in his workplace, and they ended up handing him the keys to the evidence room. But Dokes isn't done yet, and neither is Dexter's luck. Dokes eventually figures out where Dexter has been going on his nighttime excursions. He puts a GPS tracker on Dexter's boat and follows the signal to a cabin in the Florida Everglades, a remote place that Dexter has been using to hold a victim. When Dokes arrives, he catches Dexter with dismembered remains, actual physical evidence of murder right in front of his eyes. He tries to make the arrest. They fight. Dokes manages to shoot Dexter in the thigh, a grazing wound, but Dexter overpowers him with a sleeper hold and locks him inside a large cage that was already in the cabin. Now Dexter has a catastrophic problem. A police sergeant, the one person at Miami Metro who was right about him all along, is locked in a cage in his Everglades cabin, fully aware of everything. And the FBI is actively searching for Dokes. It's a matter of days, maybe hours before someone finds the cabin. Dexter goes back and forth on what to do. He considers killing Dokes, but something holds him back. He considers framing him more thoroughly and letting the FBI arrest him. He plants Dokes' fingerprints on some of his kill tools and tosses them into the ocean where a diving class will find them. But the core problem remains. Dokes is alive and knows the truth. And then the most unbelievable thing in the entire series happens. Dexter doesn't solve this problem. Someone else does, completely unprompted. Lila West, Dexter's unstable ex-girlfriend, steals his GPS device and follows it to the cabin. She had been growing increasingly obsessive after their breakup, and this was her latest attempt to insert herself back into his life. She arrives at the cabin, breaks in, and finds Dokes locked in the cage. Dokes tells her the truth. He tells her flat out that Dexter is the Bay Harbor butcher, that he kills people, that he's dangerous. Any rational human being would free the police officer and call for backup. or at the very least, run. Lila does the opposite. She sympathizes with Dexter for having to carry such a terrible secret. She sees this as proof that they belong together. Two damaged souls who understand the darkness in each other. So she decides to help him in the most extreme way possible. She turns on the gas stove in the cabin, opens the valve on a propane tank, and leaves. Dokes nearly manages to free himself from the cage. He's working on the lock. He's almost out. But the propane ignites before he can escape, and the explosion kills him and obliterates the cabin. Dexter didn't plan this. He didn't ask for it. He didn't even know Lila had his GPS device. He was actually on his way to the cabin because Lundy's task force had independently determined Dokes' location, and Dexter was trying to get there first. If Lila hadn't arrived when she did, one of two things would have happened. Either Dexter gets to the cabin first and has to make an impossible decision about Dokes in a matter of minutes, or the FBI gets there first and finds a living, breathing witness who is ready to tell them everything. Instead, Lila eliminated the problem entirely. The one person who could definitively identify Dexter as the Bay Harbor Butcher was dead. The cabin and all its evidence were destroyed, and the narrative that Dokes was the butcher was now supported by even more evidence, since his remains were found alongside dismembered body parts and tools with his fingerprints on them. The next morning, Deputy Director Adams declared the case closed. Dokes was the Bay Harbor Butcher. Even Lundy, who was smarter than everyone else in the room and probably had lingering doubts, was forced to accept the conclusion. The evidence was just too neat, too complete. And then Masuka, bless his heart, provided the cherry on top. He told Dexter that Dokes' death was being classified as a suicide. His reasoning was that a killer as intelligent and resourceful as Dokes would never have let propane leak into a room with an open flame by accident. It had to be intentional. Dokes knew he was about to be caught, and he blew himself up rather than face justice. It's a perfectly logical theory that happens to be completely wrong, and it sealed the case shut permanently. What really strikes me about the aftermath of the cabin explosion is how the institutional machinery of the police department did Dexter's work for him. LaGuerta, to her enormous credit, refused to accept the narrative. She knew Dokes. She had worked alongside him for years, and she was absolutely certain that whatever Dokes was, he was not the Bay Harbor Butcher. She tried to collect donations for his memorial service. She argued with Lundy. She went to Matthews. She did everything in her power to keep the question alive, and every single person shut her down. Lundy, who privately might have had doubts of his own, was looking at an overwhelming pile of evidence. The blood slides in Dokes' car, the fingerprints on the tools, the dismembered body at the cabin, the psychological profile that fit Dokes like a glove. From a forensic standpoint, the case was airtight. And LaGuerta's personal loyalty to Dokes, which should have been viewed as a data point in his favor, was instead treated as a conflict of interest that disqualified her from the conversation. Matthews was even more dismissive. He was already under political pressure to close the case and restore public confidence in the department. A lieutenant publicly insisting that the Bay Harbor Butcher was still out there was the last thing he needed. So LaGuerta's concerns were buried under institutional pressure, career self-interest, and the perfectly reasonable but perfectly wrong conclusion that the evidence spoke for itself. There's something deeply unsettling about watching this play out because LaGuerta was right. She was the only person at Miami Metro, other than Dexter himself, who knew the truth about Dokes. And the system that was supposed to pursue justice actively punished her for pursuing it. That's not just luck for Dexter, that's the system working in his favor, bending around the shape of his deception like water flowing around a stone. I think this is actually one of the most underrated aspects of Dexter's luck throughout the entire series. It's not just that individual people made mistakes or had bad timing. It's that the institution itself, the Miami Metro Police Department, the FBI task force, the legal system, was structurally incapable of catching him. The system rewards closure, it rewards neat answers, it punishes doubt. And Dexter, whether he realized it or not, benefited enormously from a machine that was designed to stop asking questions the moment a convenient answer appeared. Anyway, there's one more piece of luck from Season 2 that I think deserves its own moment because it happened earlier in the season and I think a lot of people forget about it. Before all the cabin drama, when Dokes was still actively following Dexter around trying to figure out what he was hiding, there was a night when Dokes tailed Dexter to a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. Dexter had been attending these meetings as part of a cover story. Rita, his girlfriend at the time, had noticed his secretive behavior and started to worry that he might be using drugs or alcohol. Dexter went along with it and started going to NA meetings where he met Lila, who became his sponsor and eventually his girlfriend and eventually the person who blew up the cabin. At one of these meetings, Dexter stood up and shared with the group. He talked about his dark passenger, this thing inside him that makes him feel truly alive. He talked about feeling disconnected from people, about wondering whether genuine human connection was something he was capable of. It was the most honest Dexter had been in front of other people in his entire life, and it was all framed as the confession of an addict talking about his relationship with substances. Dokes was in the room. He heard all of it, and he came away thinking he finally understood what was going on with Dexter. He wasn't a killer, he was just another cop who had gotten hooked on something and was trying to get clean. The strange hours, the secret life, the evasiveness, it all suddenly fit a narrative that Dokes could accept. He told Dexter to stay clean and out of his way, and they'd be fine. He stopped following him. He backed off. If Dokes had listened to that speech and heard what Dexter was actually describing, if he had recognized the dark passenger for what it truly was, the entire trajectory of the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation would have been different. But he didn't, because the simplest explanation was the most believable one. And sometimes, that's all the luck you need. So Season 2 ends with the case closed, Dokes posthumously taking the blame for everything, Lundy packing up and leaving Miami, the FBI going home, and Dexter Morgan reconciling with Rita and returning to his life as though nothing happened. He's not just free, he's been officially cleared. The department's own investigation confirmed that someone else did the killings. Dexter is safe, and in the most perverse way imaginable, he's more safe than he was before the bodies were found. Because now there's an official file that says someone else is the Bay Harbor Butcher. That is an extraordinary run of luck, and the fact that it all happened in a single season makes it even more remarkable. In the span of about 12 episodes, Dexter went from, "My entire life's work has been discovered and the FBI is closing in," to, "I've been formally exonerated and given a promotion." No other character in television has pulled off anything close to that. But Season 2, as wild as it was, is only the beginning. Because the thing about Dexter Morgan is that he never learns his lesson. Every time the universe hands him a miraculous escape, he takes it as confirmation that the code works, that he's untouchable, that the dark passenger knows best. And so he keeps going. And the close calls keep coming. Season 3 brings a new kind of danger, not from investigators, but from a friend. And I use that word very loosely. Miguel Prado is an assistant district attorney in Miami. He's charismatic, ambitious, well-connected, and on the surface, he seems like exactly the kind of person Dexter should avoid. But fate, as it tends to do with Dexter, had other plans. It starts when Dexter accidentally kills Oscar Prado in self-defense during what was supposed to be a routine kill. Oscar is Miguel's brother, and his death draws Dexter into the Prado family orbit. Over the course of the season, Miguel and Dexter develop a genuine friendship, or at least what passes for friendship in Dexter's world. Miguel eventually figures out that Dexter is a killer, and instead of running to the police, instead of being horrified, Miguel wants in. This is incredibly lucky for Dexter in the short term, and here's why. Miguel Prado is one of the most powerful men in Miami's legal system. He has connections in law enforcement, in politics, in the media. If he had decided to turn Dexter in, the case would have been airtight. An ADA with first-hand knowledge of Dexter's kills, combined with whatever physical evidence Miguel could point investigators toward, would have been enough to convict. But Miguel doesn't want to turn Dexter in, he wants to become him. He's intoxicated by the power of it, the ability to bypass the legal system he works in every day and deliver his own brand of justice. He begs Dexter to teach him the code, to let him participate. He frames it as a partnership between two men who understand that sometimes the system isn't enough. Dexter's cautious at first, but eventually he gives in. They kill together. Miguel's first kill happens in a casino storeroom. It's a man named Billy Fleeter, someone who fits the code. Dexter sets it up, injects the target with M99, and then steps back to let Miguel do the actual killing. Miguel stabs Fleeter and describes the feeling afterward as fantastic. He's exhilarated, electrified, transformed. The rush of killing has awakened something in him that he didn't know was there. And Dexter, watching this, has a thought that I think is one of the most revealing moments of self-awareness in the entire series. He thinks about Harry telling him that sharing the code was a mistake, that he's now responsible for Miguel's actions. Because the code wasn't designed to be shared. It was designed for one person, someone with Dexter's specific psychology, someone who needed the rules because without them the killing would be completely indiscriminate. Miguel doesn't have that psychology. He's not a psychopath with carefully controlled urges. He's a powerful man who just discovered he can take a life and get away with it. And that is a very different, and in some ways much more dangerous, kind of killer. For a brief, strange period, Dexter has something he's never had before. A friend who knows everything about him and accepts it. But that period doesn't last long. Miguel starts going off script. He kills Ellen Wolf, a defense attorney who was a professional rival but not someone who fit the code. She wasn't a murderer. She was just a lawyer doing her job, and a good one at that. Miguel killed her because she annoyed him, because she stood in the way of his political ambitions, and because the taste of power had overwhelmed whatever restraint he might have originally had. Dexter confronts Miguel about this. He points out that Ellen Wolf doesn't fit the code, that they had a clear agreement about who they could and couldn't kill. Miguel pushes back, calls the code a straitjacket, and argues that they should be free to use their abilities however they see fit. He even asks Dexter how many people he's killed, which is a question Dexter wisely refuses to answer. This is the moment Dexter realizes that sharing the code was a catastrophic mistake. Miguel isn't a partner, he's a liability. And a liability who knows where the bodies are buried, literally, is the most dangerous kind of all. Miguel has the connections, the credibility, and the institutional authority to destroy Dexter completely if he ever decides their friendship is no longer useful. There's also a moment in Season 3 where Dexter's colleague Camilla Fig, the records supervisor who destroyed his adoption file years earlier, is dying of cancer. She asks Dexter to visit her in the hospital, and during one of these visits, she reveals something that makes Dexter's blood run cold. She tells him she read his file before she destroyed it. She knows about the shipping container, about his mother's murder, about Brian Moser, and she eventually made the connection between Brian and the ice truck killer. She has known for years that Dexter's brother was a serial killer. But Camilla assures Dexter that she could never see him as being like Brian. She assures him that his secret is safe with her. She even tells him about reading and then destroying his file to protect him. And she dies shortly afterward with that information locked away forever. This is another quiet, devastating piece of luck. Camilla knew enough to destroy Dexter's life, and she chose not to. She chose compassion over caution, loyalty to Harry's memory over the logical conclusion that a child raised in blood might grow up to shed it. If Camilla had been a different kind of person, if she had decided that duty outweighed sentiment, she could have reported what she knew at any time during the decades she worked at Miami Metro. The file was destroyed, yes, but Camilla's testimony alone would have been enough to trigger a deep investigation into Dexter's background. She never said a word. She took it to her grave, and Dexter never had to ask her to. So Dexter kills Miguel, and then, in yet another stroke of luck, he stages the scene to look like the work of the Skinner, a separate serial killer that Miami Metro has been hunting throughout Season 3. The Skinner, whose real name is George King, has been abducting people, flaying their skin and dumping their bodies around Miami. It's a horrific case that has consumed most of the department's attention, and the presence of an active serial killer with a distinctive signature gives Dexter the perfect cover for Miguel's murder. The department, already stretched thin and focused on finding the Skinner, absorbs Miguel's death into the existing investigation without asking too many hard questions. Nobody looks twice. Nobody connects Dexter to the scene. The ADA's murder is chalked up to the city's newest monster, and Dexter walks away with clean hands once again. Meanwhile, in his personal life, Rita becomes pregnant and Dexter proposes. The season ends with Dexter getting engaged while simultaneously getting away with killing one of the most prominent lawyers in Miami. His colleagues toast his upcoming wedding, his friends congratulate him, and nobody has the faintest idea that the man they're celebrating just murdered someone and blamed it on a different serial killer. The luck here isn't as dramatic as the cabin explosion or the bloodslide mix-up. It's quieter. It's the luck of timing, of circumstance, of having a convenient scapegoat already in the headlines, but it's no less significant. If the Skinner hadn't been operating in Miami at the same time, if there hadn't been an existing investigation to camouflage Miguel's death, Dexter would have had to find some other way to dispose of a very high-profile body. And high-profile bodies, as a general rule, attract attention. Season 3 proved that Dexter could survive not just investigations and suspicious colleagues, but also the dangers of human connection. He let someone into his secret world. That person became unstable, and Dexter managed to eliminate the threat and walk away clean. It was reckless, it was avoidable, and it worked out anyway. Story of his life, really. But Season 4 is where the tone shifts completely. Because Season 4 is the season where Dexter's luck saves him in one way and destroys him in another. And I think it's the most important season of the entire show when it comes to understanding the real cost of all this good fortune. Season 4 introduces Arthur Mitchell, played in one of the greatest performances in television history by John Lithgow. Arthur is a serial killer who has been active for over 30 years, operating in a repeating cycle of murders that follows a specific ritual pattern. Because of this pattern, the FBI dubbed him the Trinity Killer, though nobody at that point knew his real identity. On the surface, Arthur seems like an upstanding member of his community. He builds houses for charity, he goes to church, he has a family, he's everything Dexter wants to be. Or at least everything Dexter thinks he should want to be. A man who has managed to sustain a normal domestic life while also indulging his darkest compulsions. Dexter is fascinated by Arthur, and for a while he studies him not just as a potential victim, but as a role model of sorts. If Arthur can balance a family and a secret life for 3 decades, maybe Dexter can too. To get close to Arthur, Dexter creates a fake identity. He introduces himself as Kyle Butler and embeds himself in Arthur's world, joining his volunteer construction crew, attending community events, even having dinner with the Mitchell family. It's a dangerous game, but Dexter is confident he can control it. He can't. What makes Season 4 so compelling and so relevant to our discussion of luck is that Dexter is now juggling more plates than ever before. He's a new father. Baby Harrison was born at the end of Season 3. He's married to Rita, living in a house in the suburbs, dealing with school events, pediatrician appointments, and the mundane chaos of domestic life. He's still working full-time at Miami Metro. And on top of all of that, he's maintaining a fake identity to infiltrate the life of a serial killer who has been evading capture for 3 decades. Something has to give, and the cracks show almost immediately. Dexter is exhausted, distracted, and making mistakes he wouldn't have made in earlier seasons. He falls asleep during surveillance, he shows up late to crime scenes, he leaves early from family dinners. Rita starts to notice. She begins questioning whether Dexter is really who he says he is, whether their marriage is as solid as she thought, whether this man she loves is keeping secrets from her. And she's right. She just doesn't know how right she is. There's a moment in Season 4 that I think perfectly encapsulates how close Dexter comes to being caught by the person sleeping next to him every night. Rita discovers that Dexter has been keeping his old apartment, the one he lived in before they got married. He told her he gave it up, but he's been maintaining it as a secret space where he can store his kill tools and slides away from the family home. Rita finds out, and she's furious. She assumes he's having an affair, which is actually the better explanation from Dexter's perspective, because the truth would be considerably worse. Dexter manages to talk his way out of it, barely, by framing the apartment as a place he goes to when he needs space, a remnant of his bachelor life that he was too attached to let go. Rita accepts this reluctantly because she loves him and wants to believe the best interpretation. But if she had pushed harder, if she had gone to the apartment and searched it properly, she would have found things that no amount of talking could explain. That's a small luck, a domestic luck, the kind that doesn't involve FBI agents or explosions, but is just as essential to keeping the whole operation running. Because Dexter's double life doesn't just depend on fooling cops, it depends on fooling everyone, all the time, in every dimension of his existence. And every person who takes him at face value, who accepts his excuses, who chooses not to dig deeper, is contributing to the ongoing miracle of his freedom. Arthur Mitchell is a different kind of threat, though. Unlike cops and colleagues, Arthur isn't constrained by procedure or institutional loyalty. He's a predator, and once he figures out that Kyle Butler has been lying to him, he becomes terrifying. Behind closed doors, he's a tyrant. He terrorizes his wife, beats his son, and controls his daughter through psychological manipulation. The wholesome exterior is a prison, and the people trapped inside it are too frightened to speak up. Arthur is a monster in every dimension of his life, not just the killing. And Arthur is also far more perceptive than Dexter gives him credit for. This becomes terrifyingly clear during one of the most iconic scenes in the entire series. Arthur follows Dexter to the Miami Metro Police Department. He goes inside, steals a visitor's badge, and wanders through the building looking at Dexter's workspace, his desk, his name on the door. And then, when Dexter spots him and approaches in alarm, Arthur looks at the name on Dexter's work badge, smiles, and says 4 words that change everything. "Hello, Dexter Morgan." In that moment, Arthur's advantage becomes total. He now knows that Kyle Butler is actually a forensic analyst for the Miami police. He knows where Dexter works. He knows his real name. He knows enough to unravel everything. And here's the lucky part. Arthur doesn't go to the police. He doesn't walk up to Laguerta's office and say, "Your blood spatter analyst has been stalking me under a false identity for months." He doesn't file a report, doesn't contact the FBI, doesn't do any of the things that would immediately trigger an investigation into Dexter's activities and blow his cover wide open. Instead, Arthur uses the information personally. He sees it as leverage, as a weapon to wield against Dexter in their private war, which is terrifying in its own right, but it's a completely different kind of danger than exposure. If Arthur had simply told the truth to anyone with a badge, Dexter would have been finished. The false identity alone would have raised enough red flags to justify a deep investigation into his entire life. But Arthur's ego, his pride, his need to handle things himself keeps him from taking the obvious, rational step. That's luck. Horrible, blood-soaked luck that comes with a devastating price tag, but luck nonetheless. There's another crucial bit of fortune in Season 4 that I think gets overlooked, and it involves Frank Lundy. Remember Lundy? The FBI agent who led the Bay Harbor Butcher investigation in Season 2? The smartest, most capable investigator Dexter has ever been up against? Lundy comes back in Season 4. He's retired from the FBI, but he hasn't stopped working. He's been tracking the Trinity killer on his own, and he's come to Miami because the trail led him here. Lundy is still sharp, still methodical, and still exactly the kind of person who could connect dots that other people miss. If Lundy had been given enough time, if he had been allowed to work the Trinity case to its conclusion, there's a reasonable chance he would have crossed paths with Dexter's extracurricular activities again. Lundy already had a nagging sense during the Butcher investigation that something didn't quite add up. Dokes as the Butcher was a convenient answer, but Lundy was never fully comfortable with it. Given enough time in Miami, poking around enough crime scenes, asking enough questions, Lundy could have become a problem again. He never gets the chance. Christine Hill, a journalist who turns out to be Arthur Mitchell's secret daughter, shoots Frank Lundy in a parking lot. She also shoots Deborah, who survives but is badly wounded. Lundy dies at the scene. Dexter had nothing to do with it. He didn't plan it, didn't facilitate it, didn't even know about Christine's connection to Arthur at the time. But the result is that the single most dangerous investigative mind Dexter has ever faced is permanently removed from the equation. The man who almost caught him in Season 2, who might have caught him eventually if given enough time, is dead. And he was killed by someone else's secret daughter for reasons that have nothing to do with Dexter. Season 4 builds toward its devastating finale, an episode called The Getaway. Dexter finally catches up with Arthur Mitchell and kills him. It's a satisfying resolution to the cat and mouse game that has defined the season. Arthur is dead. The Trinity killer's cycle is broken. Dexter did what he set out to do, even if it took him far longer than it should have. And that delay is crucial. Throughout the season, Dexter has multiple opportunities to kill Arthur. He could have done it early, before the cycle restarted, before Arthur learned his real name, before any of the dominoes started to fall. But he didn't. He hesitated. He was fascinated by Arthur's ability to maintain a family life alongside his killing. And he wanted to study that, to learn from it, to find out whether the balance Arthur seemed to have achieved was something Dexter could replicate. This is one of those moments where Dexter's intellectual curiosity, usually an asset, becomes his greatest liability. He treated Arthur like a research subject instead of a target, and the price for that delay was everything. Because while Dexter was studying Arthur, Arthur was studying him right back, and Arthur was faster. But when Dexter gets home, he finds Rita dead in the bathtub. Arthur, before Dexter got to him, had already completed his cycle. Rita was his final victim. Their infant son, Harrison, is sitting on the bathroom floor in a pool of his mother's blood, mirroring exactly what happened to Dexter in that shipping container 3 decades earlier. This is the darkest moment in the series, and it complicates the idea of luck in a way I think is important to sit with. On one hand, Rita's death is the ultimate consequence of Dexter's hubris. He had multiple opportunities to kill Arthur earlier in the season and didn't take them, because he was too fascinated, too busy studying Arthur's ability to maintain a family life. Every day Dexter delayed was another day Arthur was alive and dangerous, and it cost Rita her life. On the other hand, Arthur took his knowledge of Dexter's true identity to the grave. He didn't tell anyone that Kyle Butler was actually a Miami Metro employee. He didn't leave behind notes, recordings, or testimony that could incriminate Dexter. He killed Rita, which was an act of pure cruelty, but he didn't expose Dexter, which would have been just as easy and arguably more destructive. If Arthur had been arrested instead of killed, he would have told investigators everything. The false identity, the stalking, the months of deception. It would have triggered an investigation that would have burned Dexter's life to the ground. But Arthur died, and his secrets died with him. Dexter's luck saved his secret. It just couldn't save the person he loved. And I think season 4 is the first time the show really grapples with the idea that luck is not the same thing as being spared from consequences. You can get lucky and still lose everything. After Rita's death, Dexter enters season 5 as a grieving, destabilized single father. He's raising baby Harrison alone with help from a nanny, and he's struggling to maintain even the appearance of normalcy. The dark passenger hasn't gone away, it never does, but the motivation behind Dexter's kills shifts. He's angrier, more reckless, and less concerned about the code than he's ever been. Season 5 pairs Dexter with Lumen Pierce, a woman who was kidnapped, tortured, and repeatedly assaulted by a group of men led by a self-help guru named Jordan Chase. Dexter rescues Lumen and then helps her systematically track down and kill every man who hurt her. It's a revenge story within a revenge story, and it gives Dexter something he hasn't had since Lila, a partner. But Lumen is different from Lila in a crucial way. Lila was chaotic and self-serving. Lumen is traumatized and purpose-driven. She isn't interested in Dexter's darkness for its own sake. She needs his skills to destroy the men who destroyed her. It's transactional, at least at first, though it evolves into something more complicated and arguably more tender than anything Dexter has experienced with another person who knows his truth. The risk of this partnership is enormous. Lumen is a civilian with no training, no forensic knowledge, and no experience with violence at this scale. She's also emotionally volatile, which is completely understandable given what she's been through. Every time they go on a kill together, Dexter is exposing himself to a witness who could panic, make mistakes, or eventually decide that what they're doing is wrong. If Lumen ever walked into a police station and told them what she and Dexter had been up to, he'd be finished. But Lumen doesn't betray him. She's loyal, determined, and surprisingly capable when it matters. The two of them work through Jordan Chase's network methodically, taking them out one by one, until only Chase himself remains. It's a cathartic arc for Lumen and a revealing one for Dexter, who discovers that he's capable of genuine emotional connection with someone who sees all of him. The problem is that they're not as invisible as they think. Deborah has been working the Jordan Chase case from the legitimate side of things. She knows there are vigilantes operating in Miami. She doesn't know their identities, but she's been following the trail of bodies connected to Chase's assault ring, and she's getting closer with every dead suspect. By the time Dexter and Lumen get to Chase himself, Deborah is essentially running a parallel investigation that's converging on the same location. The luck in Season 5 operates on 2 levels, and both are significant. The first is the season finale. Dexter and Lumen have just killed Jordan Chase. They're in the middle of cleanup, disposing of evidence, wiping surfaces, doing all the things Dexter has done 100 times before. The room is draped in plastic, the body is on the floor, and then they hear footsteps. Deborah shows up. They're cleaning up the scene, disposing of evidence, going through their by-now practiced routine of eliminating traces. And Deborah shows up. She's figured out that there are vigilantes operating in Miami who have been targeting the men connected to the assault ring. She doesn't know their identities, but she knows they exist. And now she's standing in the room where the final kill happened, with Dexter and Lumen on the other side of a sheet of semi-transparent plastic. Deborah draws her weapon. She orders the people behind the plastic to drop what they're holding and not move. She can see their silhouettes, but not their faces, not their features, nothing that would let her identify them. When Lumen leans forward slightly, Deborah fires a warning shot into the wall, and then something remarkable happens. Deborah, a lieutenant of homicide, a career law enforcement officer who has spent her entire adult life pursuing justice, makes a choice. She tells the two silhouettes to be gone within an hour. She turns around and walks out without ever seeing who was behind the plastic. This is one of the luckiest moments in the entire series, and it's luck that's built on something deeply personal. Deborah lets them go because she watched the assault DVDs, because she understands what was done to Lumen, because she feels that what the vigilantes did was, on some level, justice. It's a violation of everything she's sworn to uphold, but she does it anyway. If the plastic had been slightly more transparent, if Deborah had insisted on seeing their faces, if she had arrived 30 seconds later when they might have been out from behind the sheeting, if she had simply done her job the way she was trained to do it, any of those things would have ended Dexter's run right then and there. His own sister would have arrested him. The second piece of luck in Season 5 involves Joey Quinn and a dirty cop named Stan Liddy. Quinn, who has been suspicious of Dexter for his own reasons, hired Liddy to surveil Dexter and find evidence of wrongdoing. Liddy actually managed to collect some seriously incriminating material. He was getting close. Then Liddy got killed, and Quinn became a suspect in his death, and the blood evidence linking Quinn to the crime scene needed to be processed by someone in the forensics department. You can probably guess who ended up handling it. Dexter ran the blood work on Quinn's case, and in doing so, made the evidence come back clean enough for Quinn to be exonerated. Quinn was cleared of suspicion, and in return, Quinn owed Dexter. He stopped investigating, he stopped asking questions. He even thanked Dexter privately for what he'd done. The one person at Miami Metro who was developing genuine suspicions about Dexter, who had hired a private investigator to dig into his activities, was neutralized not by violence, but by a favor. Dexter saved Quinn's career, and Quinn repaid him by looking the other way for the rest of the series. It's a different kind of luck than an exploding cabin or a fortuitous murder, but it's just as effective. And it shows how Dexter's position inside the police department, his access to evidence and forensic tools, creates opportunities for self-preservation that no ordinary criminal would ever have. Season 5 ends with Lumen leaving Miami. Her dark passenger, as she calls it, has faded now that the men who hurt her are dead. She's at peace, or at least closer to it. Dexter, by contrast, is alone again. He removes his wedding ring for the first time since Rita's death, sits at Harrison's birthday party surrounded by friends and colleagues, and thinks about the future. He's survived another year. He's survived being partnered with a civilian who knew his secret, being investigated by a dirty cop, and being literally feet away from his own sister during an active crime scene. The universe has once again bent itself around Dexter Morgan and kept him intact. But the cracks are starting to show, and in Seasons 6 and 7, they become fractures. Season 6 has Dexter chasing a pair of killers, staging elaborate religious tableaus around Miami. Bodies arranged to recreate scenes from the Book of Revelation, posed in churches and public spaces with grotesque artistry. The perpetrators are Travis Marshall, a young man with severe psychological issues, and his mentor, Professor James Geller, who Travis believes is guiding him in fulfilling some apocalyptic prophecy. The Doomsday case is one of the more visually disturbing arcs in the series, with victims positioned to resemble biblical imagery. An angel of death with wings made from actual human parts, a horseman tableau, a woman covered in locusts. It's theatrical in a way that recalls the ice truck killer from Season 1, except the motivation here isn't personal, it's ideological. Travis believes he's doing God's work, carrying out a divinely ordained plan to bring about the end of the world, which, from a psychological standpoint, makes him more unpredictable than most of Dexter's targets. There's a twist midway through the season that some people saw coming and others didn't. Geller has been dead the entire time. Travis killed him long ago, and everything we've seen of Geller throughout the season has been a hallucination. Every conversation, every planning session, every moment where Geller appeared to be coaching Travis was actually Travis talking to himself, following instructions from a man who's been decomposing in a freezer beneath a church. This twist is relevant to our discussion because Dexter actually teams up with Travis briefly before discovering the truth. Dexter believes Geller is the mastermind and that Travis is a manipulated follower, so he approaches Travis as a potential ally in tracking Geller down. This is a significant miscalculation, one of several that Dexter makes in Season 6, and it could have gotten him killed. Travis is unstable, violent, and operating under a delusional framework that could turn against anyone at any moment. The fact that Dexter walked away from that alliance unharmed is partly skill and partly the kind of fortune that has become his signature. Season 6 also contains a smaller but notable lucky moment involving Dexter's personal life. Louis Green, Masuka's intern, develops an obsessive interest in Dexter. He steals the prosthetic hand from the ice truck killer evidence locker, sends it to Dexter as a kind of twisted tribute, and begins investigating Dexter's background. Louis represents the kind of low-level threat that Dexter usually handles easily, but the timing is terrible. Louis is poking around at exactly the moment when Dexter is most distracted by the Doomsday case. Louis could have become a genuine problem if he'd lived long enough to connect the right dots. Instead, he gets murdered by the Koshka Brotherhood early in Season 7 for unrelated reasons, his interest in Dexter dying with him before it could develop into anything actionable. Another loose thread snipped by someone else's violence. But the big lucky break of Season 6, the one that matters more than any of the others, happens at the very end. And it doesn't feel lucky at all in the moment. It feels like the worst thing that could possibly happen. Dexter kills Travis in a church and Deborah walks in, not behind a sheet of plastic this time, not in silhouette. Deborah Morgan, lieutenant of homicide, walks into the church and sees her brother standing over a dead body with a knife in his hand. There is no ambiguity, no plausible deniability, no convenient obstruction. She sees him. She sees what he's done, and their eyes meet. This is the moment the entire series has been building toward in a way. The question was never really, will Dexter get caught by the police? The question was always, what happens when Deborah finds out? And now she has. This should be the end. In any rational universe, Deborah's training takes over, she calls for backup, and Dexter is arrested. But this isn't a rational universe. This is Dexter's universe, where the normal rules of consequence seem to have a persistent blind spot. Deborah doesn't arrest him. She helps him set fire to the church to destroy the evidence. Now, I want to be clear that this isn't pure luck in the way that Lila blowing up the cabin was luck. Deborah's choice to protect Dexter is rooted in years of love, codependency, and a relationship that has always been more complicated than either of them could articulate. She's not making a cold, rational decision. She's in shock, she's terrified, and the person she loves more than anyone in the world is standing in front of her asking for help. In that moment, she chooses her brother over her oath. But the luck is in the timing. If Deborah had arrived 60 seconds earlier, she would have seen Travis still alive, still strapped to the table. If she had arrived 5 minutes later, the body would have been disposed of and she might never have known. But she arrived at exactly the worst possible moment. The moment that forced the revelation and then made the choice that kept Dexter free. Season 7 opens in the aftermath of this discovery, and it is the most psychologically intense season the show ever produced. Deborah goes to Dexter's apartment and finds everything. The kill tools, the blood slides, the plastic wrap, the knives. All of it laid out on his coffee table like the world's most horrifying confession. She asks him directly, "Did you kill all those people?" And he says yes. She asks if he's a serial killer, and he says yes. Deborah's reaction is visceral. She runs, she vomits, she punches Dexter in the face. She oscillates between rage, grief, and something that looks a lot like mourning, because the brother she thought she knew is gone. And this stranger wearing his face is someone she doesn't recognize. But she doesn't turn him in. She tries to control him instead. She moves in with him, monitors his behavior, tries to keep him on a leash. It doesn't work because you cannot domesticate someone like Dexter Morgan. But the attempt is its own form of lucky break. Instead of an arrest, Dexter gets a handler who loves him too much to do the right thing. Meanwhile, the ghost of the Bay Harbor Butcher case is stirring again, and this time it's Captain Maria LaGuerta who's poking the corpse. LaGuerta has never fully accepted that James Dokes was the Bay Harbor Butcher. She and Dokes were close, and she always felt in her gut that he was framed. In Season 7, she finds a charred bloodslide at the Travis Marshall Church crime scene. A bloodslide, the signature trophy of the Bay Harbor Butcher. This is a problem because the Bay Harbor Butcher case was officially closed when Dokes died. If new bloodslides are turning up at crime scenes years later, it means one of two things. Either there's a copycat or the original butcher is still alive and still killing. LaGuerta starts digging. She pulls together a list of police employees who own boats. She cross-references timelines. She looks at who moved their boat from the marina when the original investigation was closing in. And every trail keeps leading her back to the same name, Dexter Morgan. She also revisits the cabin in the Everglades where Dokes died. She and Matthews go out to the property and speak with Juan Alonso, the landowner, and hear something that should have been an absolute bombshell. The cabin wasn't rented to James Dokes, it was rented to Santos Jimenez. And when Matthews hears that name, his face changes because he knows who Santos Jimenez is. Jimenez was one of the 3 drug dealers who murdered Dexter's biological mother in the shipping container massacre. Think about what this means. The cabin where the Bay Harbor Butcher evidence was found, the cabin that was supposed to prove Dokes was the killer, was rented by one of the men who killed Dexter's mother. The connection to Dexter is direct and damning. LaGuerta immediately sees it. She reminds Matthews that Dexter's biological brother, Brian Moser, was the ice truck killer, that both boys witnessed their mother being dismembered, that the butcher also dismembered his victims, that Dexter is a blood spatter analyst, the perfect cover for someone obsessed with blood. She puts it all together, and she's right about every single piece. The coincidence of the cabin rental, the blood slides, the boat, the childhood trauma, the forensic expertise. It all points to one person, and Matthews, who has known Dexter since he was a boy, who feels a personal debt to Harry Morgan for years of friendship and service, pushes back. He tells LaGuerta he'll handle it. He interrogates Dexter himself, giving him a preview of the case against him and an opportunity to prepare his defense. It's not quite obstruction of justice, but it's close, and it buys Dexter time he desperately needs. This is, in theory, an even more dangerous investigation than Lundy's in Season 2. Because LaGuerta isn't wrong. She's actually right about everything. She's right that Dokes was framed. She's right that the real butcher is still active. She's right that it's Dexter. For the first time in the series, someone is building a case against the correct suspect with real evidence and institutional authority to back it up. And lucky break after lucky break prevents her from finishing the job. First, Captain Tom Matthews warns Dexter about LaGuerta's suspicions. Matthews has known Dexter since he was a child. He feels a fatherly obligation to Harry's adopted son, and he thinks LaGuerta is grasping at straws. So instead of letting the investigation proceed naturally, he goes to Dexter and tells him what's coming. He even interrogates Dexter himself, asks him some hard questions, and seems satisfied when Dexter feeds him a fabricated story about seeing Dokes act suspiciously around boats. Matthews takes this explanation and pressures LaGuerta to back off. Second, Deborah volunteers to help with LaGuerta's investigation, ostensibly as a supportive colleague, but actually to sabotage it from the inside. Deborah reviews the list of people who have gone missing since Dokes died and match the butcher's victim profile. She confirms with Dexter which ones he actually killed, and then she handles those interviews herself, making sure no trail leads back to him. She even plants evidence to strengthen the case that Dokes was the real butcher. Think about that. Dexter's sister, who knows the truth, is actively working to undermine the one investigation that has correctly identified him as the Bay Harbor Butcher. She's using her badge, her access, and her authority to obstruct justice and protect a serial killer, and she's doing it because she loves him. Third, LaGuerta actually succeeds in having Dexter arrested. She gathers enough circumstantial evidence to justify it, and Dexter is brought in. This is the closest he's ever come to facing actual legal consequences. He's in handcuffs. He's in an interrogation room. The charges are real. And then he's released because the evidence he had previously tampered with creates enough reasonable doubt to undermine the arrest. The case falls apart not because LaGuerta was wrong, but because Dexter had spent years salting the evidence trail with just enough misdirection to make any case against him look flimsy. But La Guerta won't stop. She's getting closer, she's talking to the right people, asking the right questions, and she's not going to let this go until she has Dexter in prison or dead. And this is where the luck takes its darkest, most terrible turn. The Season 7 finale, an episode called Surprise Motherfucker, brings everything to a head in a shipping container, which is a location choice that's so symbolically loaded, I could write an entire separate video about it. Dexter has lured his latest kill target to the container as bait. La Guerta takes the bait and comes to investigate. Dexter is there, ready to kill her. And then Deborah arrives. Deborah finds La Guerta on the ground, unconscious. She finds Dexter standing over her, knife in hand. And now she's in the exact same position she was in at the church, except the stakes are infinitely higher. This isn't a stranger, this is La Guerta, a woman Deborah has known for years, a colleague, a captain. La Guerta regains consciousness. She sees what's happening, and she tells Deborah to shoot Dexter, to do the right thing, to end this. Dexter, in a moment that shows just how profoundly the code has warped his understanding of human relationships, tells Deborah to do what you have to do. He's resigned to it. If Deborah shoots him, at least the secret dies with him. But Deborah doesn't shoot Dexter. She turns the gun on La Guerta and pulls the trigger. The one person at Miami Metro who was absolutely, completely, verifiably correct about Dexter being the Bay Harbor butcher is now dead. Killed, not by Dexter, but by his sister. The woman whose entire career has been built on pursuing justice has committed murder to protect a serial killer. This is the most disturbing lucky break in the entire series, not because of the mechanics of it, which are straightforward, but because of what it says about the collateral damage of Dexter's existence. Every time Dexter gets lucky, someone else pays the price. Dokes paid it, Lundy paid it, Rita paid it, and now La Guerta has paid it, and Deborah's soul has paid it too. The investigation dies with La Guerta. Nobody picks it up. Nobody questions the circumstances of her death closely enough to find the truth. The official narrative is cleaned up, the evidence is handled, and Dexter walks away again. Season 7 ends on New Year's Eve with fireworks going off and Dexter wondering if this is the beginning of the end. It's a rare moment of self-awareness for a character who usually treats his miraculous escapes as proof of his own invincibility. For once, he seems to understand that the price of his freedom keeps going up, and that eventually the bill will come due. He's right, of course. The bill is coming, but not in the way he expects, and not before a few more strokes of luck that are so brazen they almost defy belief. Before we get to Season 8, though, I want to circle back to a couple of moments from Season 7 that I glossed over earlier because they deserve more attention. Season 7 wasn't just about La Guerta's investigation, it also threw 2 additional threats at Dexter that each came uncomfortably close to ending him. The first is Isaac Serko, a Ukrainian mob boss from the Koshka Brotherhood. Dexter kills Viktor Baskov, one of Isaac's men, early in the season. Viktor had murdered a cop, Detective Mike Anderson, and Dexter takes care of him in his usual fashion, bashing his head with a fire extinguisher in a baggage storage room at the airport. Standard Dexter. But Viktor was more than just a mid-level criminal. He was someone Isaac cared about deeply, personally, in ways that went beyond professional loyalty. Isaac comes to Miami for revenge. He's intelligent, methodical, and deeply dangerous in a way that most of Dexter's opponents aren't. He's not a law enforcement officer bound by procedure. He's a mob boss with resources, manpower, and zero qualms about killing. And Isaac almost gets Dexter. There's a scene in Season 7 where Dexter comes home to his apartment and something feels off. His curtains are open in a way he didn't leave them. Jamie and Harrison are away in Orlando, so nobody should be in the apartment. Instead of walking in, Dexter calls his own house phone from outside. He disguises his voice and leaves a fake message pretending to be a friend, confirming a meeting at a restaurant called Schooner or Later. Isaac, who has been lying in wait inside the apartment planning to capture and torture Dexter, overhears the message and leaves for the restaurant. Dexter watches from a distance as Isaac exits his apartment, recognizes him, and realizes just how close he came to walking into a trap. If Dexter hadn't noticed the curtains, if he hadn't had the instinct to call ahead, if the voicemail trick hadn't worked, Isaac would have had him. This one is less about external luck and more about Dexter's own survival instincts kicking in at the right moment. But the margin of error was razor thin. There's also the Ray Speltzer incident, which is easily one of the scariest moments in the entire series. Speltzer is a hulking, violent murderer that Dexter targets in Season 7. He breaks into Speltzer's RV to look for evidence and trophies, and finds exactly what he's looking for. But Speltzer comes back unexpectedly. Before Dexter can react, Speltzer attacks him. And this isn't a close fight. Speltzer is bigger, stronger, and enraged. He physically overpowers Dexter, tosses him around like a rag doll, and eventually knocks him unconscious with a broken table leg. Dexter wakes up in an abandoned warehouse. There's a note on the floor that says one word: run. And then Speltzer appears wearing a bull-horned helmet and carrying a massive axe. This is now a hunt, with Dexter as the prey. Speltzer chases him through the building, down flights of stairs, through rooms full of mannequins. Dexter manages to reach the roof, jumps down to a lower level, then drops to the street and escapes on the back of a passing truck. A passing truck. Let that settle. Dexter Morgan, the meticulous planner, the man who controls every variable of every kill, is running for his life through an industrial building and escapes because a truck happened to be driving past at the exact moment he landed on the street. If that truck hadn't been there, Speltzer would have caught him. And Speltzer, unlike Dexter, was not the type to strap his victims to a table for a philosophical conversation before killing them. He would have used that axe. Dexter eventually catches up with Speltzer later in the season, knocks him out with a shovel at a cemetery, and kills him in a crematorium. But the initial encounter, the one where Speltzer had him unconscious on the floor and could have finished the job, is a reminder that Dexter's physical luck is just as important as his investigative luck. He's not invincible, he can be overpowered, outfought, and beaten. He just keeps surviving anyway. I also want to mention the evidence room situation in Season 7 because it's a perfect example of how Dexter benefits from other people's corruption. The blood evidence linking Isaac Serco to a murder at a bar disappears from the Miami Metro evidence room. It's stolen, probably by someone connected to the Koshka Brotherhood who has a mole inside the department. Suspicion falls on Quinn, who has been dating a dancer from a club the Brotherhood operates. Dexter benefits from this chaos because the focus on Quinn's potential corruption draws attention away from his own activities. When the team goes back to the bar to try to recollect the evidence, the crime scene has been deliberately contaminated with sewage. The evidence is gone, the crime scene is useless, and Dexter had nothing to do with any of it. The mob's cleanup operation inadvertently created confusion that helped Dexter stay invisible during a season where he was more exposed than ever. It's another case where other people's actions, for completely unrelated reasons, just happened to work out in Dexter's favor. The universe playing favorites again. Season 8 is the final season of the original run, and while the writing quality is, let's be honest, a step down from the heights of Seasons 1 through 4, the season still delivers some truly remarkable examples of Dexter's seemingly inexhaustible good fortune. The season introduces Dr. Evelyn Vogel, a neuropsychiatrist who arrives in Miami with a bombshell. She helped Harry create the code. She was the one who diagnosed young Dexter, who advised Harry on how to channel his son's violent urges, who co-designed the framework that would define Dexter's entire life. She is, in a very real sense, one of the architects of the monster. Vogel's presence complicates the idea of the code being a father's last-ditch effort to save his son. It reveals that Dexter's entire operating system was designed by committee, that there was a clinical, academic dimension to what Harry did. It doesn't change the fundamentals, Dexter still kills and the code still guides him, but it adds a layer of institutional complicity that makes the whole thing feel less like destiny and more like an experiment. But Vogel also provides something enormously valuable to Dexter. She provides legitimacy. As a respected scientist, she validates his existence, tells him that he has a place in the world, and acts as a kind of therapist who understands exactly what he is without recoiling from it. In a season where Dexter is preparing to flee Miami with Hannah McKay and his son Harrison, Vogel gives him something approaching peace. The main thread of Season 8 is Oliver Saxon, also known as the brain surgeon. Saxon is Vogel's biological son, a psychopath she failed to help and ultimately abandoned. He's killing people in Miami, removing pieces of their brains, and he has a personal vendetta against Vogel, and by extension, Dexter. Saxon is dangerous, but he's not the Trinity killer. He's not Lundy. He's not even LaGuerta. The real drama of Season 8 is Dexter's attempt to leave Miami and start a new life in Argentina with Hannah and Harrison, and the ways in which that plan keeps getting derailed. Hannah McKay deserves a moment here because her presence in Dexter's life is both a source of danger and a source of luck. Hannah is a serial killer herself, a poisoner who murdered her first husband and several other people using a combination of botanical knowledge and cold patience. She and Dexter develop a romantic relationship in Season 7, and by Season 8, they're planning to flee Miami together with Harrison and start fresh in Buenos Aires. The problem is that Hannah is a wanted fugitive. Private investigator Jacob Elway has been tracking her, and he nearly catches her at the airport when they're trying to board their flight to Argentina. Elway spots Hannah in the boarding area, and she has to hide in the women's restroom while Dexter figures out a way to get her past him. Dexter's solution is wildly clever and completely insane. He buys a backpack from the airport gift shop, fills it with random items, and places it under a chair near where Elway is standing. Then he approaches the gate attendant, introduces himself as a Miami forensics analyst, which is technically true, and reports that he saw a suspicious man leave a bag under a chair and walk away. He points at Elway. The gate attendant calls airport security, and Elway is detained. This works. The plan actually works. The man who has been hunting Hannah for months is neutralized by a fake bomb scare orchestrated by a serial killer pretending to be a concerned citizen. The sheer audacity of using his legitimate forensic credentials to frame an innocent man in an airport is vintage Dexter, and the fact that it succeeds without a hitch is yet another entry in the luck column. Unfortunately, the bomb scare also means all passengers have to evacuate the boarding area, so Dexter and Hannah miss their flight anyway. But the escape plan adapts. Later, when things go even further sideways and Dexter can't leave Miami because of Deborah's shooting, Hannah takes Harrison and boards an evacuation bus heading to Jacksonville. On the bus, Elway catches up to them again. He finds Hannah, grabs her arm, and tells her he's going to turn her in at the next stop and hand Harrison over to Child Protective Services. Hannah pours tea from a thermos, offers it to Elway, and when he scoffs, she injects his leg with M99, the same sedative Dexter uses. Elway passes out and wakes up hours later in Tallahassee, alone, with no idea where Hannah and Harrison have gone. The fact that Hannah had M99 on her on a public bus with a child beside her and managed to sedate a grown man without anyone noticing is one of those moments that stretches credibility to its breaking point. But within the universe of the show, it works because Hannah has always been defined by her ability to appear harmless while being anything but. She's the perfect partner for Dexter, someone who understands the mask because she wears one too. What happens at the very end of the season contains arguably the most audacious lucky moment in the entire show, and it happens inside a police station, on camera. Dexter walks into a holding cell where Saxon is being detained. He tells the officer on duty that he needs to perform a GSR test, which is gunshot residue analysis. It's a plausible cover story, nobody questions it, because Dexter has been a trusted forensic analyst at this station for over a decade. Once inside the cell, Dexter sits down across from Saxon. He lays out his forensic kit on the table, including a ballpoint pen. And then he starts talking. He talks in what is presented as an act of self-defense. Dexter immediately seizes the pen back and drives it into Saxon's neck. Saxon drops, bleeds out, dies on the floor of the holding cell. Dexter hits the alarm button. 2 officers rush in. Dexter cowers against the wall, acting terrified. Afterwards, Batista and Quinn review the security footage. They watch the entire sequence. Batista is confused about why Dexter was even in there, which is a fair question. But Dexter explains that he wanted to make sure the GSR test was done properly and that he wanted to look Saxon in the eye. Batista seems to accept this. Quinn says it's obviously self-defense. They both agree that they have everything they need to clear Dexter. Quinn even says he wishes he could have done it himself. Dexter murdered a man in a police holding cell on camera in front of his colleagues, and they thanked him for it. They cleared him immediately. They didn't even ask hard questions. This is so far beyond luck that I almost don't know what to call it. It's institutional trust weaponized. It's the accumulated goodwill of a decade of donuts and blood reports and quiet reliability paying off in the most extreme way possible. Nobody suspects Dexter because nobody has ever suspected Dexter, not really, not in a way that stuck. And so when he kills a man in broad daylight inside a police station, the assumption is that it must be legitimate, because it's Dexter, and Dexter is one of the good guys. After Saxon is dead, Dexter's final escape begins. Hurricane Laura is bearing down on Miami. Deborah, who was shot by Saxon earlier, has suffered a massive stroke. The doctors tell Dexter that the damage is irreversible. She will never recover, she will never wake up. The Deborah who protected him, who killed for him, who destroyed her own moral compass to keep him free, is gone. Dexter disconnects her life support. He whispers, "I love you, Deb," as she dies. Then he wraps her body in a sheet, carries her through the hospital during the hurricane evacuation when everything is chaotic and nobody is paying attention to a man carrying what appears to be a patient, loads her onto the slice of life and takes her out to sea. He drops Deborah's body into the ocean, the same ocean where he dumped all those garbage bags full of dismembered body parts for years. His sister, his protector, his last real connection to the world, disappears beneath the waves. Then Dexter calls Hannah and Harrison for the last time, throws his phone into the water, and drives a slice of life directly into the hurricane. The storm passes. Search teams find the wreckage of Dexter's boat off the coast. No survivors. Angel Batista is notified, and it is widely assumed that Dexter Morgan died in the hurricane. His colleagues mourn him. His obituary celebrates a respected member of the Miami Metro forensic team. The Bay Harbor butcher, whose identity was publicly attributed to the late Sergeant James Dokes, is officially a dead case attached to a dead man. Meanwhile, in Argentina, Hannah and Harrison sit at an outdoor cafe. Hannah reads the news about Dexter's death on a tablet, wipes away a tear, and asks Harrison if he'd like ice cream. And then the camera cuts to the Pacific Northwest. Logging trucks rolling into a lumberyard. A bearded man in a flannel jacket unloading timber, walking home to a small rented room. He sits down at a wooden table and looks into the camera. It's Dexter, alive, free, unknown. He faked his death. He drove into a hurricane and survived. He assumed a new identity, moved to the other side of the country, and started over as a lumberjack. The Bay Harbor butcher died a hero in everyone's eyes. Dexter Morgan, the man behind the mask, simply disappeared. I honestly don't know if there's a better example in all of fiction of a character getting away with it so completely. Not just escaping justice, but being eulogized by the very people he spent a decade deceiving. It's the ultimate lucky ending for a character built entirely on luck, or at least it would have been the ending. But the Dexter franchise, much like its protagonist, refuses to stay dead. Several years after the original series ended, the show came back with Dexter New Blood, set about a decade after those events. And then came Dexter Original Sin, a prequel set in 1991. And then Dexter Resurrection, picking up after New Blood. And each of these continuations adds its own entries to the catalog of Dexter's impossible luck. Let's talk about the prequel first, because it gives us something we never got to see in the original series. Young Dexter's first kills, the early days of the code, and the mistakes of a beginner. In Original Sin, set in 1991, Dexter's in his early 20s. He's working as a forensic intern at Miami Metro, living with Harry and a teenage Deborah. And he's just beginning to act on his violent urges under Harry's guidance. The code is still new, the rituals aren't polished yet, and Dexter, for all his natural talent, is still learning. He doesn't have the muscle memory yet, the instinctive feel for timing and preparation that the older Dexter takes for granted. He's making it up as he goes, with Harry coaching him from the sidelines like a little league dad whose kid happens to be learning murder instead of baseball. What's fascinating about Original Sin from a luck perspective is that it shows us how close the entire Dexter Morgan story came to ending before it ever really started. The original series presents us with a polished, experienced killer who has been doing this for years and has refined his process to something close to an art form. The prequel strips all of that away and shows us a kid who is fundamentally winging it. And the gap between winging it and getting caught is basically one lucky break. One of the most striking lucky moments from the prequel involves a target Dexter refers to as Mad Dog. The plan is straightforward by Dexter's standards. He subdues Mad Dog at his house, sets up a kill room, and prepares for the ritual. But things go wrong almost immediately. Mad Dog regains consciousness faster than Dexter expected. Way faster. Before Dexter can react, Mad Dog is free. He's attacking, and the carefully controlled environment of the kill room has devolved into a chaotic brawl. Dexter chases him into the street. It's a disaster. His target is running loose, potentially screaming, drawing attention from neighbors and passersby. Everything is falling apart in real time. A 20-something Dexter is standing in the middle of a residential street watching his target sprint away, and he's got no plan at all for what to do next. And then a car hits Mad Dog, a random car driven by a random person who has no idea what they've just intervened in, strikes his fleeing victim and stops the escape cold. Mad Dog goes down. The driver is shocked, and Dexter, standing somewhere nearby, is watching the most improbable save of his young career unfold without him lifting a finger. He didn't plan it. He couldn't have planned it. It's pure, dumb, mechanical luck. A car appeared at exactly the right moment on exactly the right street to prevent a 20-something serial killer's first serious mistake from becoming a catastrophe. But the luck doesn't stop with the impact. Dexter now has to race back to Mad Dog's house and dismantle the entire kill room before police arrive to investigate the hit and run. The plastic, the tools, the evidence of what he was doing in that house, all of it needs to disappear. He barely makes it. 2 police officers arrive at the house just as Dexter finishes cleaning up. He has to hide while they check the premises, hold his breath while they look around, and hope they don't notice anything out of place. They don't. They look around, they don't find anything suspicious, and they leave. This is Dexter at his most vulnerable and most fortunate simultaneously. He's inexperienced, he's made a significant mistake, and the only thing standing between him and discovery is the timing of a car accident and the brief attention span of 2 patrol officers. In the original series, Dexter's luck feels earned in a way because he's a master of his craft, who benefits from fortunate circumstances. In Original Sin, the luck is rawer, more desperate, and it highlights just how easily the whole Dexter Morgan story could have ended before it even began. There's also something worth mentioning about Harry's role in all of this, because Harry's involvement is itself a form of luck that Dexter probably never fully appreciated. Harry Morgan made a deeply questionable choice to train his adopted son as a killer rather than getting him professional help. But setting the morality aside, the practical effect of Harry's decision was that Dexter had a mentor with deep knowledge of law enforcement, crime scene investigation, and the criminal justice system. Harry taught Dexter how cops think, how investigations work, how evidence is collected and analyzed. He essentially gave Dexter a masterclass in how to avoid being caught by the very system he worked for. Without Harry, Dexter's natural intelligence and instincts might have been enough to keep him alive for a while. But without the specific knowledge of police procedure, forensic science, and investigative methodology that Harry drilled into him, Dexter would have made catastrophic mistakes much earlier and much more frequently. The fact that Harry existed at all, that a cop adopted a traumatized child and chose to channel his violence rather than report it, is the foundational piece of luck upon which everything else is built. And then there's the fact that Harry killed himself before he could change his mind. This sounds harsh, but think about it. In the later seasons of the original series, we learn through flashbacks that Harry walked in on Dexter dismembering a body. He saw the full reality of what his training had produced, and it broke him. He overdosed on his heart medication and died. The official cause of death was listed as heart disease, and Captain Matthews buried the real autopsy report to protect the family. If Harry had lived, if he had survived that moment of horror and disgust, what would he have done? He might have gone to the police. He might have tried to undo what he'd created. He might have turned Dexter in. But he didn't live long enough to make that choice. He died with the secret, and Matthews covered up the manner of his death, and Dexter was left with a code and no one to override it. That's not something Dexter engineered. That's fate, once again, removing a potential obstacle before it could become one. And then there's New Blood, the sequel that promised, after years of debate about the original finale, to finally give Dexter a definitive ending. Set in the fictional town of Iron Lake, New York, Dexter has been living under the alias Jim Lindsay for roughly a decade. He runs a local shop, he dates the town's chief of police, Angela Bishop, and he has successfully suppressed his killing urges for years. No murders, no dark passenger, just a quiet, anonymous life in a small town where nobody knows his name, his history, or what he's capable of. And honestly, this might be the luckiest period of Dexter's entire life, even though nothing dramatic is happening. Think about what it takes to disappear in the modern world. To fake your death, assume a new identity, move across the country, and build an entirely new life from scratch. Almost anyone who attempts this gets caught within months. The digital footprint alone, bank records, social media, surveillance cameras, makes it nearly impossible to vanish completely. Dexter did it during a hurricane. He drove his boat into a Category 4 storm, survived somehow, and washed up somewhere on the coast. He then made his way to a tiny town in upstate New York, established himself as Jim Lindsay, and simply started over. Nobody came looking, nobody connected the dots, and nobody thought to check whether the respected forensic analyst who died in Hurricane Laura might have actually survived and relocated to the other side of the country. For 10 years, this worked. 10 years of normalcy, or something close to it. Dexter suppressed his urges, held down a job, dated a police chief, and lived the kind of quiet, unremarkable life that the code was never designed to accommodate. The code assumes the killing will continue. It's a framework for ongoing behavior, not a path to retirement. And yet Dexter retired anyway, or tried to, and somehow got away with it for an entire decade. Then his son Harrison tracks him down. Harrison, now a teenager, has his own dark tendencies. He's been having violent thoughts, getting into trouble, and he sought out his father looking for answers. The reunion is complicated in every possible way. Dexter is simultaneously thrilled to see his son and terrified of what Harrison's presence means for his carefully constructed anonymity. Harrison is angry, confused, and desperate for a connection to the father who abandoned him. Dexter's instinct is to protect Harrison, to teach him the code the way Harry taught him, to channel whatever darkness is inside the boy into something manageable. It's history repeating itself, a second generation of Morgan men grappling with violent urges and looking for a framework to contain them. But Dexter also falls off the wagon. He kills Matt Caldwell, an arrogant man who drunkenly drove a boat into a group of swimmers and killed 5 people, but escaped justice thanks to his family's wealth and political connections. It's a classic code-compliant kill, but it reignites everything Dexter has been suppressing. The dark passenger is back, and once it's back, it doesn't leave quietly. The situation in Iron Lake deteriorates rapidly from there. Matt's father, Kurt Caldwell, is a serial killer himself, which is one of those coincidences that makes you wonder if Dexter is magnetically attracted to other murderers, or if the show is making a point about how violence hides in plain sight everywhere. Kurt has been kidnapping and killing young women in the area for years, and his position in the community, much like Arthur Mitchell's in Season 4, provides perfect cover. Angela Bishop, Dexter's girlfriend and the town's chief of police, starts connecting dots. She's a good cop, intuitive and persistent, and she begins to notice inconsistencies in Jim Lindsay's story. She also starts researching the Bay Harbor butcher case, a thread she pulls from a true crime podcast connection, and the more she digs, the more the profile of the butcher starts to look uncomfortably like the man she's sleeping next to. What's interesting about New Blood from a luck perspective is that for the first time in the franchise, Dexter's luck starts to actually run out. Angela figures it out, not all of it, not immediately, but enough to know that Jim Lindsay is not who he claims to be, and that the Bay Harbor butcher case is connected to the man living in her town. This is something that never happened in Miami. In all those years, with all those investigators, nobody who stayed alive long enough managed to build a complete case against Dexter. Angela does it in a matter of weeks. Part of this is because Angela is good at her job. Part of it is because Dexter is rusty after a decade of suppression and makes mistakes he wouldn't have made in his prime. But part of it, I think, is because the scales were finally starting to balance. You can only run on borrowed luck for so long before the debt comes due. Harrison discovers who his father really is. Not just the alias, not just the suppressed urges, but the full scope of what Dexter Morgan has been. And Harrison's reaction is not what Dexter hoped for. The finale of New Blood brings Dexter face to face with his son, and it's not the reunion either of them imagine. Harrison is horrified by what Dexter is. He doesn't see a principled vigilante operating under a code. He sees a monster, a man whose wake is littered with dead innocent people, from Rita to Deborah to LaGuardia, to countless others who got caught in the gravitational pull of Dexter's existence. And Dexter, in a moment of devastating clarity, realizes that his son is right. The code was never enough. The rules were never enough. He has caused more suffering than he has prevented, and the only way to break the cycle is to end it. Dexter tells Harrison to shoot him, and Harrison does. Dexter falls, he whispers, "You did good." Harrison leaves. Angela arrives at the scene and lets Harrison go, recognizing that the boy was trying to stop something his father never could. This should be the end. Dexter Morgan, dead at last, killed by his own son in the snowy woods of upstate New York. A fitting conclusion to a story about cycles of violence and the impossibility of escaping what you are. When New Blood aired, a lot of fans saw this as the real ending, the one that should have happened in 2013 instead of the lumberjack scene. Harrison pulling the trigger felt right in a way that driving a boat into a hurricane never did. Except the first episode of Dexter Original Sin reveals, through a framing device, that Dexter was taken to a hospital after Harrison shot him. He briefly died on the operating table. His heart stopped, the monitors flatlined, and then emergency room doctors managed to revive him. He came back. He survived, and Dexter Resurrection, which followed, picks up from that revelation, showing Dexter alive, traveling to New York City to find Harrison, facing new antagonists, including characters played by Uma Thurman and Peter Dinklage, and continuing to exist in a world that has tried over and over and over to end him. Even death couldn't stick. Even his own son pulling the trigger at point-blank range wasn't enough. The universe, or the showrunners, or whatever cosmic force governs the Dexter franchise, looked at a man who was shot by his child and left for dead in the snow and said, "Not yet." I find this genuinely remarkable, and not just as a storytelling choice. Think about the full arc from the shipping container in 1973 to the gunshot in Iron Lake. Dexter Morgan has survived for over 50 years, despite being surrounded by danger at all times. He has been hunted by the FBI, stalked by colleagues, discovered by family members, attacked by other serial killers, shot, stabbed, beaten, driven into hurricanes, and clinically killed on an operating table. And he's still here. At what point does luck stop being luck and start being something else entirely? I don't have an answer to that, but I think the question itself is part of what makes Dexter so endlessly fascinating to talk about. I think about that a lot, actually. Across 8 seasons of the original show, a prequel series, and 2 sequel series, Dexter Morgan has been saved by his ex-girlfriend blowing up a cabin, his blood slides being stolen by the wrong person, his adoption file being destroyed, his brother dying before he could talk, the FBI's best agent being murdered by someone else's daughter, his victim taking the truth to the grave, his sister committing murder to protect him, his colleagues ruling a holding cell killing as self-defense, a hurricane covering his escape, a random car hitting his fleeing target, and emergency room doctors bringing him back from clinical death. That's not a character, that's a statistical impossibility wearing a Hawaiian shirt. And now, as we wind this down, as you're maybe getting sleepy, which is perfectly fine, that's what this is for, I want to sit with a few thoughts that have been building throughout this entire conversation. The first is about the sheer mathematics of Dexter's survival. I went through the show pretty carefully preparing for this, and I counted at least 22 distinct moments across the franchise where Dexter was one decision, one coincidence, or 1 second away from being caught, killed, or exposed. 22. And those are just the major ones. If you include the smaller saves, the moments where a colleague didn't ask the right follow-up question, or a neighbor didn't look out the window at the wrong time, or a victim didn't manage to get their hand free just a little bit faster, the number would probably be closer to 50 or 60. The odds of surviving any one of those moments are slim. The odds of surviving all of them are essentially 0. And yet here we are, however many episodes later, and Dexter Morgan is alive. Not free exactly, because freedom implies peace. And I don't think Dexter has ever truly been at peace, but alive, breathing, somewhere out there in the fictional world of the franchise, existing in a way that should be mathematically impossible. The second thought is about patterns, because when you lay out all these lucky moments in chronological order, a pattern emerges that I find really interesting. In the early seasons, Dexter's luck tends to come from external sources. Other people make mistakes that benefit him. Dokes steals the slides, Lila blows up the cabin, Camilla destroys the file. Lundy gets shot by someone else. These are things that happen to Dexter's advantage, not things he engineers. In the middle seasons, the luck shifts. It becomes more about people choosing to protect him. Miguel chooses partnership over prosecution. Deborah chooses silence over duty. Quinn chooses gratitude over investigation. Matthews chooses loyalty over justice. The luck is no longer random, it's personal. It's people who know some version of Dexter deciding, for their own reasons, to let him continue. And in the later seasons, the luck becomes almost existential. A hurricane covers his escape. A son's bullet doesn't quite finish the job. Emergency room doctors revive him on the table. The universe itself seems to intervene, as if the story refuses to let its main character go, even when the narrative logic demands it. I don't know what that progression means exactly. Maybe it means that Dexter's luck was always really about the people around him. And as those people were consumed by his existence, the luck had to come from increasingly impersonal sources. Maybe it means the show evolved from a grounded thriller into something closer to myth, and the luck evolved with it. Or maybe it doesn't mean anything and I'm finding patterns where there are none, which is, to be fair, a very human thing to do. The third thought, and this is the one that sits with me the most, is about the cost. Is Dexter actually lucky, or is the show telling us something darker about how the world works? Because when you look at the list of people who paid the price for Dexter's freedom, the answer starts to shift. Dokes died. He was an innocent man, a good cop with sharp instincts, who was right about Dexter from the very beginning. He spent his last days locked in a cage in the Everglades, and he was killed by an explosion he didn't cause, and he was posthumously branded as a serial killer. His reputation, his legacy, everything he built in his career was destroyed to protect the man he was trying to expose. That's not justice. That's not luck. That's a tragedy. Lundy died, a brilliant investigator who came out of retirement because he couldn't let go of an unsolved case. He was shot in a parking lot by someone else's daughter for reasons that had nothing to do with the Bay Harbor butcher investigation. But his death removed the single greatest threat to Dexter's continued freedom. And Dexter never had to lift a finger. Rita died, a woman who survived an abusive first marriage, rebuilt her life, fell in love with a man she believed was safe and kind and decent, and was murdered in her own bathtub by a serial killer that her husband had been secretly studying for months. If Dexter had killed Arthur Mitchell when he first had the chance, Rita would be alive. But Dexter waited because he was fascinated by Arthur, because he wanted to learn from him, because the dark passenger wanted to savor the hunt. Rita paid for that fascination with her life. Lagerta died, a career cop who rose through the ranks in a system that wasn't designed for her, who fought for her position and her authority every day, and who was killed because she dared to be right about something that everyone else was willing to let go. She saw through the lie that the department had built around Dokes' death. She followed the evidence. She did exactly what a good investigator is supposed to do. And she was murdered for it, not by Dexter, but by Deborah, who was so consumed by her love for her brother that she crossed a line she could never come back from. And Deborah, who spent her entire life as a good person trapped in a bad situation that she didn't create and couldn't escape, who discovered that her father had trained her brother to be a killer, who covered for Dexter out of love and desperation, who killed LaGuardia and was destroyed by the guilt, who was shot by Oliver Saxon and died from complications that could have been avoided if Dexter had made different choices at almost any point in the preceding 8 years. Every name on that list is a person whose life was ruined or ended because Dexter Morgan was allowed to continue. His luck was paid for in their blood. His freedom was built on their graves, and the sickest part, the part that I think the show is really trying to tell us, is that Dexter knows this. He has always known this, and it has never been enough to make him stop. There's a moment in season 7 where Dexter has an internal dialogue about the dark passenger. Harry's ghost or hallucination, or whatever you want to call it, suggests that the dark passenger might not be a real external force at all. That it might just be a feeling, an urge, something that Dexter invented to avoid taking responsibility for his own choices. Dexter resists this idea because, as he puts it, if there's no dark passenger, then I'm responsible for everything I've done. That line is the key to the entire show, I think. The dark passenger, the code, the ritualistic structure, all of it exists to create distance between Dexter and the reality of what he does. and the luck serves a similar function in the narrative. Every miraculous escape reinforces the illusion that Dexter is special, that the universe is protecting him, that his mission has some kind of cosmic sanction. But strip away the luck, and you're left with a deeply damaged man who kills people because he can't stop, who has convinced himself that rules and rituals make it acceptable, and who has left a trail of destroyed lives behind him that stretches across decades. Dexter's luck isn't free. It's subsidized by the suffering of everyone around him. Every miraculous escape comes at someone else's expense. Every time the universe bends to keep Dexter free, it breaks someone else in the process. And the fact that Dexter has been lucky for so long doesn't make him fortunate. It makes the people around him profoundly unfortunate. Maybe that's the real point. Maybe the show isn't about a lucky serial killer at all. Maybe it's about the gravitational pull of a deeply broken person and the wreckage they leave in their orbit. The luck isn't luck. It's just the narrative consequence of being the center of a story. Everyone around you gets sacrificed so you can keep going. And you never have to reckon with the full weight of that sacrifice because there's always another season, another escape, another miraculous save that lets you look in the mirror and tell yourself that you must be doing something right. Or maybe I'm overthinking it and the man just has incredible luck. That's the beautiful thing about a story this rich. It can hold both interpretations at the same time. What I do know, sitting here at the end of this very long conversation about a very long show, is that Dexter Morgan is one of the most compelling characters ever created for television. Not because he's a good person, he obviously isn't. Not because he's a hero, he isn't that either. But because he forces you to think about the gap between what we know and what we do, between the truth and the stories we tell ourselves, between justice and the systems that are supposed to deliver it. Every lucky moment I described tonight is also, from a different angle, a failure of the system, a failure of the police department to investigate one of its own, a failure of the FBI to follow the evidence past the most convenient conclusion, a failure of the people who love Dexter to hold him accountable, a failure of the institutions that were supposed to protect the public to actually do so. And that, more than any individual scene or twist, is why I think Dexter resonates so deeply with so many people. Because we all know, on some level, that the systems we rely on have blind spots, that clever people can exploit them, that luck, privilege, and timing matter as much as evidence and truth. Dexter takes that uncomfortable knowledge and turns it into a narrative that is by turns thrilling, heartbreaking, disturbing, and wickedly funny. It asks you to root for a serial killer, and then it asks you to think about what it means that you did. Across over 100 episodes spanning from the 1990s to the present day, Dexter Morgan has dodged more bullets, both literal and figurative, than any character I can think of. He's been investigated by the FBI, stalked by a suspicious colleague, discovered by his own sister, arrested by a police captain, shot by his own son, and driven into a hurricane. And he's still out there. Somewhere, probably under another fake name, probably in another quiet town, Dexter Morgan is alive. The dark passenger is riding shotgun. The slice of life is long gone, resting at the bottom of the ocean off the coast of Miami. But whatever boat he has now is probably well maintained and fueled up and pointed toward deep water. Old habits die hard. And Dexter Morgan, as we have thoroughly established tonight, does not die at all. If history is any guide, he's probably about to get incredibly lucky again. And somebody else is probably about to pay the price. Anyway, that's every time Dexter got insanely lucky. Or at least every major time, because honestly, there are probably a dozen smaller moments I didn't have time to cover tonight that each deserve their own conversation. The time Speltzer overpowered him in Season 7 and he escaped by jumping off a roof. The time Isaac Serco was lying in wait inside his apartment, but Dexter called his own house phone to check, heard the answering machine pick up, and realized someone was there before walking in. The time Hannah McKay could have poisoned him at literally any point during their relationship and chose not to, which isn't exactly luck, but isn't exactly not luck either. There are layers and layers to this, and we could do another 2 hours on just the minor saves. But that'll be for another night. If you enjoyed this, I've got more deep dives planned. More Dexter stuff, including one I'm really excited about that breaks down every season's main antagonist and ranks them by how close they came to actually winning. More TV lore in general, more long-form content designed for exactly this kind of cozy late-night listening. The kind of thing you can put on, close your eyes, and just let the stories wash over you. Subscribe if you want to catch those when they drop. And if you're still awake, YouTube thinks you'll like the video on screen right now. But if you're drifting off, that's perfect too. That's exactly what this is for. I'd rather you fell asleep feeling relaxed and entertained than stayed awake out of obligation. Sleep is important. And if the lore of a fictional serial killer's impossible luck is what gets you there, then honestly, I think that's beautiful in a weird sort of way. Stay safe, sweet dreams, and remember, if you ever feel like the universe is conspiring against you, just think about Dexter Morgan. That man used up enough good fortune for about 40 lifetimes, and somehow there's still more in the tank. Whatever luck you need tomorrow, the odds are in your favor because they can't possibly be as long as the odds Dexter has already beaten. I'll see you in the next one.